A storm was brewing in the church. A big conflict had emerged between two major groups with extremely different views. Strong feelings prevailed on both sides. Each group believed they knew what was best for the church, that they understood what God intended, how God wanted the church to be. Many, maybe most churches in this country know something of this dynamic. Perhaps synagogues, mosques, and other places of worship do also, and try to do ministry amidst the dynamics of disagreement. Each group, each individual believes what they are fighting for is right, necessary, perhaps even pure, just, and true. A storm was brewing in the church. The stakes were very high. The outcome was critical. The ongoing life of the church was hanging in the balance. The church where the storm was brewing was a young church, a new church development that had been strategically located in Galatia, the area now known as Central Turkey. Paul had started several churches in this Gentile area of the world. These new Christians had never been Jews. They had not converted to Judaism and then become Christian. They were Gentiles. They did not, nor had they ever, practiced the rituals and laws of the Jewish tradition. In fact, they might not even have known the rituals, laws, and Jewish tradition. Paul had worked very hard to get several new churches up and going in the area. Once the churches were established and somewhat stabilized, Paul headed off to other parts of the world to share the gospel with even more people, beginning even more churches. Now, when Paul began a church and nurtured people into Christianity and nurtured these new Christians, they were always in his heart. And he tried to keep in touch with them whenever he could through letters and messengers and return visits whenever possible. The Galatian church that he had started was about to be thrown into the midst of a theological and cultural debate striking at the very core of their existence. In Paul's absence, after he moved on from Galatia, other preachers came into the area of these Galatian congregations, and they were proclaiming a different message, a contradictory message. In order to be Christian, they said, these Gentiles must first become Jews, practitioners of Jewish rituals, followers of Jewish cultural and religious laws. Then, and only then, could they be Christian. Now, in our time, the significance of this conflict may be a little hard to grasp. The idea of becoming a practicing Jew as prerequisite to becoming a Christian is not among the many issues that we disagree and argue about in the Presbyterian Church. We generally see Judaism and Christianity as different faith perspectives, different religions. We may engage in interfaith efforts, perhaps interfaith dialogue, or join forces to take on a project or fight for a cause. We may see Judaism and Christianity as related and having common roots. But usually in our time, Judaism and Christianity are seen as two of the unique major religious traditions. Let's stop here for a moment, though, and remember that Jesus was born into a Jewish family. He practiced Jewish tradition, ritual, and law, though one might add with a bit of a twist and a bit of a different perspective. Somewhat like Martin Luther seeking to reform the Roman Catholic Church, Jesus was seeking to reform Judaism, going back and going forward to what he believed was God's intention for the people of God. We need to remember that Jesus was a Jew, and a very good one at that, faithful in studying the Hebrew Scriptures, ministering, for the most part, to the Israel nation, teaching in the synagogues, learning in the synagogues. We need to remember also that Paul was a Jew, faithfully devoted to Judaic tradition and practice to perfection, radical to the point of persecuting those who claimed to be Christian. And then in an encounter with God, his life was transformed to a broader, more inclusive perspective. The rest of his life was spent in ministry to the Gentiles, taking Jesus' ministry, which Jesus took to the Israel nation, taking that message and ministry now to the Gentiles, those beyond the Jewish tradition. spreading far beyond Israel, far beyond that band of committed Jews who had become Christian and following Jesus. There is a storm brewing in the Galatian church. And Paul, who had been a devoted, committed follower of Judaism, is in the middle of the storm. He knew the value of Jewish law and tradition. He knew it was important. And yet, he also knew what was at stake. In Galatia, what is at stake in this dispute is establishing foundational principles of the Christian church. In fact, it's deciding who's in and who's out. Determining what is required, what must be left behind, what commitments must be made in order to be a Christian. What is at stake is the heart and soul of what it really means to follow the Jesus way.